Chapter 51. The Temple Festival and the Attack of Helios. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Apollo, Artemis, you're here. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, smiled at the young girl who walked in. The ant was wearing a long pale yellow dress. The thin material could hardly hide her plump figure. She had a beautiful face, a tall and straight figure, and was graceful and extravagant. In her lap, a young girl of 11 or 12 years was sitting quietly. The light purple hair color and pale blue eyes set off her delicate and clear face as white as jade. The dark color of her short skirt added a touch of unspeakable mysterious temperament, revealing the glittering white calves, graceful and slender. Although she was just a budding flower, she was also full of seductive power. Sister Persephone. Apollo smiled and greeted the young girl on Demeter's lap. The girl Persephone blinked her green eyes and stared curiously at Apollo's bright blonde hair. Persephone, be polite and call them Brother Apollo and Sister Artemis. The goddess of agriculture scolded her daughter. Only then did the young girl speak weakly. Brother Apollo, Sister Artemis, you are so beautiful. With a smile on the corner of Artemis' mouth, she bent down and leaned in front of the girl. Persephone, you are also very beautiful. Looking at them, Apollo's eyes glanced around. Beside the chair next to Demeter, he found a silver treasure chest. He walked there as if nothing had happened, put away the treasure chest with space magic, and said to Demeter, why has Auntie been like Aunt Hestia all these years, not showing up at Olympus much? I just wanted to spend some time with Persephone, Demeter said, but her face was a little gloomy. Apollo understood that this aunt, as Hera's sister, Demeter's temperament in the early years, was not much different from Hera's. She even married Zeus before Hera as his sixth wife. But the position of the Queen of God finally fell into the hands of her sister Hera. After that, she was forced by Poseidon and turned into a mare but could not escape. It was a very humiliating experience. After that, she expressed her thoughts of fighting and became as indifferent and secluded as her eldest sister Hestia. Don't say it, Apollo. Your reputation on the earth has now spread to the gods. Demeter smiled, I went to the mother goddess 2 days ago, and even the mother goddess mentioned you and said he has one of the most famous grandchildren and asked you to visit her sometime. Grandma Rhea knows me too. Apollo was a little surprised. The goddess Rhea was the mother of the second-generation king of gods, Cronus, one of the 12 titans in the past, and gave birth to 6 brothers and sisters of Zeus. When the Zeus brothers were able to overthrow the titans, this goddess also contributed a lot behind the scenes, but her reputation was not well known. As the second queen of the gods, she was not as famous as the first queen of the gods, Gaia, the mother of the earth, and her presence was not even as strong as the current queen of the gods, Hera. But her status in Olympus was also extremely noble. Over the years, the brothers of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades were able to maintain a harmonious relationship and maintain the rule of Mount Olympus. She played a key role in it. It is indeed my fault that I have not been able to visit Grandma Rhea after being in Olympus for so long. Apollo blamed himself, I will trouble my aunt to take me there in a few days. Well, I happen to be taking Persephone to mother's to pay my respects as well. Demeter smiled and stroked the pale purple hair of her daughter in her arms. Unexpectedly, Persephone pouted and said, Mother, don't mess up my hair. It won't look good. Sister Artemis said that I am the most beautiful. Apollo and Artemis were lost in laughter when she jumped up from her mother's lap and came up to Apollo. She opened her eyes and said, Brother Apollo, Grandma Rhea is peaceful. She likes to tell me stories the most. She likes a pretty child like me, and you are also very pretty. She must like you too. I'm not as pretty as you, Persephone, Apollo said. After flirting with Persephone for a couple of minutes. Suddenly, under the worried gaze of Artemis, his face became icy cold. In the city-state of Delphi. Looking at the long white dress in front of her, Phocacia was a bit stunned. It's been 30 years, this should be just a moment for your eternal life, but I remember very clearly that I was in this palace at the beginning, and I wore this skirt and listened to your teaching. Your every expression, every smile, is so full of vigor, those vulgar craftsmen can't outline 1/10,000th of it in eternity. She muttered to herself. Her appearance had not changed much, but she had a bit more mature charm between her eyebrows, stroking the pattern of the white dress with her slender palms. Her cheeks were as beautiful as flowers, full of happy memories, but the corners of her eyes were tinged with moisture. After a while, someone outside reminded me, "Lord Priest, the ceremony is about to begin." Thekasha dropped the white dress in her hand this time, and her eyes fell on another long priestly robe. "When I knelt before you and prayed, I promised to serve you for life. Now I can fulfill this promise." Looking at his daughter dressed as a pure white holy priest, King of the Delphi looked a little silent. "Daughter, have you really decided? Although you were a priest of the church in the past, the temple has not been built, and you have not been enlightened by divine grace, you can still quit. If you really enter the temple today and become a lifelong virgin priest, then your long life for thousands of years in the future will only be in front of the sculpture of the temple forever." The sad words of her father's sympathy lingered in Thekasha's ears. The former princess, and the current priestess, had a sweet smile on the corner of her mouth. Gazing at the tall sculpture in the distance, she calmly said, "To be able to serve him for the rest of my life is the best place for me to return to." Looking around at the crowd, she clenched her right fist, tapped her brow, and recited, "Praise the light." The crowd was agitated, and each one of the believers raised his right fist and praised the light. The sacred and solemn priest's robe could hardly conceal her graceful posture. Thekasha, looking reverent, walked step by step through the crowd to the centermost altar. Chiron, who was half-human and half-horse, was already standing there with a solemn expression and a rich golden radiance on his body. Staring at the dense crowd below, he announced loudly, "The Temple of Light has been built, and the ceremony will begin now." Thekasha then walked to the center of the altar and smiled as she looked down at the crowd below. "Before the festival begins, let us praise the great God of light." She raised her right fist, tapped her eyebrows, and recited in her mouth, "Great God of light, you are the brightest star in the wide sky, you are the Lord of mercy and discernment, your light will travel in the heavens, in the earth, in the sea, and in the hearts of all spirits." One by one, the believers looked solemn and followed the chanting, and the sacred voice echoed throughout the city-state like a holy sound descending to the earth. Just then, a cold snort came out abruptly from the sky. "Apollo is just a main god. How can he have a taller and more majestic temple than the temple of the King of Gods? Foolish mortals, you have gone too far. Let me, Helios, the sun god, judge you today." Chapter 52. Chiron head on with Helios. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the vast sky, crimson flames were thundering instantly. A golden chariot flew over and inside came a burly figure with flying blonde hair and a cold face. Helios, the sun god. Chiron stared sharply at the sky. As the son of the second-generation king of the gods, Cronus, he lived for thousands of years and knew almost every god. Helios was also one of the high-ranking gods among the original Titans, but he was an enemy of the Zeus brothers during the Titan War. Later, although he escaped, he did not go to Tartarus to accompany his uncle. But he was let out in vast land, and his reputation was little known to mortals. But Chiron was aware of the power of this god. The moment Helios appeared, his heart thumped, and he knew he was terrible. The many believers in the lower mortal world have not yet had time to react. They just saw the flames filling the sky and the endless hot aura surging. The target was none other than the statue of the god of light in front of the temple. "No matter what god you are, I can't allow you to offend his majesty." Thekasha shouted loudly, and her body exuded a dazzling golden aura, which turned into a solid shield in midair. Boom! The crimson flames slammed into the shield, and the endless fire swept the sky, but they were all blocked. Helios's eyes narrowed. This is the Do-Chi he spread in the mortal world. Humph, it's just for mortals to use. How can it be compared with such great divine powers as me? He snorted coldly and slammed a finger at the shield. The rich flames scorched the sky, and under the violent and cold sweep, the shield of Thakasha's Do-Chi aura suddenly cracked open with a few gaps. No, I will never back down. Thakasha's pretty cheek stared at the sky resolutely, and her body was filled with a steady stream of golden Do-Chi. Her talent was not strong. Apollo said at the beginning that it would take 20 years for her to cultivate the golden Do-Chi. She really did take a full 20 years as well. Chiron, who studied after her, only had to spend less than 10 years. His Do-Chi reached the level of gold, and he could fight with gods. But that was only the lower or middle gods. And Helios, the sun god, was a powerful main god who was prominent during the reign of the second generation of the king of gods and had already set foot on the rank of the main god. Of course, she knew how strong the other party was. But since he wanted to destroy the statue of Apollo, how could she tolerate it? Thakasha's eyes showed infinite perseverance, her body was suspended in the air, and she continuously poured the majestic golden Do-Chi into the shield. She completely blocked out the raging and blazing flames. Humble mortal, you actually have such strength. Looking at the pretty and determined woman below, Helios' face was gloomy. His own power was actually blocked by a mortal. If this was known by the gods, how could he stand on Olympus? Since that's the case, then I'll let you know what the main god is. Helios roared in anger, the body of crimson flames rolled, and a vast aura suddenly enveloped the sky. The extremely rich flame slammed down on the Do-Chi shield. Boom! The invisible shield split into pieces in the air with a loud bang. The powerful divine might, like a mountain, crushed many believers in front of the temple. One believer was crushed to his knees. Only Thakasha and Chiron, who had cultivated golden Do-Chi, were able to support them. Ha, you mortals are all believers of Apollo. I'll give you a chance. The scarlet flames rolled into the void, and Helios looked proudly at the thousands of believers lying on the ground. As long as you give up your faith in him and shout the name of the sun god, Helios, I can forgive your sins. Otherwise, the fire of the sun will make you burn like hell. Before he could finish his words, an old man struggled and pointed at him with his cane. What, sun god, you are all hypocritical demons. Only the great god of light is the real god. With a gaze full of devotion, he gazed at the statue in front of the distant temple and murmured, the earth is ravaged by monsters, the people suffer, and only the God of light will send down salvation and grant us the power to defend ourselves. Under the might of Helios, the old man raised his right fist with difficulty, tapped his eyebrows, and recited. Great God of light, you are the brightest star in the wide sky, you are the Lord of mercy and discernment, your light will travel in the heavens, earth, sea, and in the hearts of all spirits, envied out along with his voice. One by one, the believers who were enveloped by divine power chanted along. Finally, all raised their right fists together and tapped their brows, praise the light. Helios' face was flushed red, and his body was burning with scarlet flames that seemed to distort. You foolish mortals, since you disobey my will, then all of you will die. He roared to mobilize divine power, and endless fiery flames violently enveloped the bottom. Suddenly, 9 sharp sword blades, laced with the densest golden Do-Chi, shot harshly at his face. Who? Helios was furious, and the crimson flames covered his body and the sharp arrows that were shot. But the golden Do-Chi surged through his flames and fell sharply on his face. Helios couldn't believe it. He was the main god. The golden Do-Chi was weakened through the flame. Naturally, he would not be wounded by the mortal weapons. But he was a dignified god who was shot in the face with an arrow by a mortal. What kind of shame was that? He glanced down angrily and saw the centaur with a bow and arrow. Are you Chiron? He recognized the illegitimate son of the second generation of the king of gods. No, I am the chief of the church of the god of light. Chiron stared at him calmly as the golden do-chi surged on his body. Well, you actually believe in Apollo, too. Aren't you the most disdainful of the gods? Helios sneered. Chiron helped the Kasha, who was injured by Helios, and said quietly. That's for you gods. Lord Apollo is different from you, and he is the real god. Humph, I don't want to listen to your nonsense. Since you dare to stand in my way, I will end your life. Helios roared, and the crimson flames were like thunder, slashing at the centaur and half-horse existence below. Teacher. The Kasha looked worriedly at Chiron. The latter chuckled at her. Do you know why I didn't help you just now? Because I was accumulating strength. Under the gaze of thousands of believers, the golden do-chi on his body burned like a flame. The sky covered by the flame of Helios suddenly lit up with bright stars, forming a half-human, half-horse pattern in the sky. Helios, if you are disdainful of the do-chi created by the god of light, then I will let you know the greatness of the power created by the god of light. I will light up the stars in the sky that belong to me and use this power to test the so-called sun god. What kind of great power it has. Under the starlight, Chiron said solemnly. Chapter 53. Zeus' expression changed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 53. Zeus' expression changed in the vast starry sky. Astraeus, lord of the stars, suddenly opened his eyes. Where his gaze touched, a star suddenly burst into a bright light in the infinite starry sky, forming a pattern of half-man and half-horse. Astraeus sighed slowly. Someone really cultivated Apollo's do-chi cultivation method to the point of invoking the stars. But why do these stars feel like they are related to another force? When he muttered here, Apollo, who had just walked out of Olympus, his eyes shrank suddenly. The power of the stars of the etheric divine body, the stars of Sagittarius, are condensing. Is this Chiron's promotion? He whispered, and his figure turned into a golden light that cut through the wide sky. Suddenly, endless waves surged. A meandering and vast circling river at the end of the world blocked his path. In the endless waves, Oceanus, the oceanic god, held a cold spear and gazed at him coldly. Apollo, you killed my son, and today you have to pay the price. It turns out that you also participated in this matter. Apollo's golden eyes were cold, and a blazing flame burned toward Oceanus. He sneered. Without Hecate and Athena's help, you can't beat me alone. He was very confident. As the one of the 12 titans in the past, and the ruler of 1/3 of the ocean. Without the authority of the king of gods, even Zeus would not dare to fight him. Although he knew that Apollo had improved a lot over the years. But in the end, he was just a junior god. How could he be his opponent alone? Just stay here and watch your followers burn to ashes by the flames of Helios. Although I can't offend Zeus for killing you, it's a great pleasure to make you suffer. Oceanus laughed smugly and waved his spear, rolling up endless waves which swept in front of Apollo. Really? I didn't expect you to be so stupid. Apollo sneered abruptly, his body ignited with infinite light, and the pure white flame burned blazingly in the water waves. Before the waves hit his body, they all evaporated instantly and turned into nothingness. Oceanus' face changed, and he hurriedly raised his spear. The ocean and rivers rotated, and the eternal mighty power shook the heavens and the earth, condensing on the long and narrow spears. The gods all over the world were alarmed. Ocean and rivers are pushed to the limit. What is the oceanic god doing? The gods were horrified and turned their eyes to the sky. They saw a blazing light flashing between the vast sky and the earth. The golden light was shining endlessly. The handsome young man stood in the light, and his expression was sacred and inviolable. It's Apollo. Is Oceanus going against His Majesty King of Gods and looking for trouble? What a blazing light, Apollo is worthy of being the most famous main god in recent years, and he was able to compete with the oceanic god without falling behind. But what are they fighting for? Some gods questioned. Suddenly, a god recalled, isn't today the day when the greatest temple that mortals built for Apollo was completed? Yeah, the strange starlight just now seemed to be triggered from there. Did something happen? The gods were agitated. Soon they sensed the change in the temple of Delphi. How dare Helios be so barbaric and jealous of Apollo's temple? He actually directly went to deal against Apollo's followers. Sure enough, it is the remnant of the Titans, and there is no bearing of the gods. The gods laughed. Tisk, it's not that Apollo is too flashy. His temple is even bigger than his divine majesty. Now Helios is persecuting his followers, and he's being held back by the oceanic god. There were also gods who sneered jealously, waiting to see the joke. In the temple of the goddess of agriculture, the expressions of Artemis and Demeter changed. Apollo just went out in a hurry, so it was because of this damned Helios. Demeter said angrily. On the other hand, Artemis did not say a word, and with a cold aura surging from her body, she quickly walked outside. Brother, I am also the main god now, and I can help you. So saying, a silvery white bow and arrow emerged from her palm. Suddenly, a deep voice appeared in her ear. Artemis, my daughter, come to the palace of the king of God. The father wants to see you. Zeus' voice made Artemis blush, and she gritted her teeth as she looked toward the lofty temple at the highest point of Olympus. And there, Zeus took out a crystal similar to Hera's and gazed with a smile at the scene in Delphi. Helios and Oceanus, you are such a fool. The fate of Apollo is peculiar, but yours is in the hands of my 3 daughters, and by a mere flick of the thread belonging to you, you are completely at my mercy. Test the limits of Apollo's strength for me. He laughed and shifted the picture to the battle situation in the sky. Suddenly his expression changed. Ocean and the world entwined. In the endless waves, Oceanus' face was solemn, and the long and winding ocean was condensed on the long and narrow spear under his control. He had the divine power of the 8th rank main god, and he had been pushed to the extreme. The icy hole penetrated the bright light in front of him. The gods who were watching the battle in secret were terrified. In the bright light, only the divine figure with dazzling blonde hair had a calm face. He actually stood still in the void and did not move. He let the endless water waves sweep through, and the icy spear pierced the light. What is Apollo doing? This is an all-out attack from the 8th rank Meon god of the ocean, and he actually converged on the field. Is it possible that he wants to use his divine body to resist it? Yes, the power of the gods is all in their authority and divine power. How can there be such a battle? I'm still too young to understand the duel of the gods. The god sighed. And Oceanus was laughing maniacally. This spear condensed all his strength. Even if the existence of the 9th rank main god faced this blow, he would be severely injured. At that moment it was only a little distance away from Apollo's chest. If you want to blame it, you have to blame yourself for your lack of combat experience. You are extremely stupid. Come and suffer death for my Achilles. He growled and stabbed out the final distance. Suddenly, in the infinite light, a sigh appeared on Apollo's handsome cheeks. Oceanus, I didn't want to beat you this way, but who told me to hurry now? When a long sigh echoed. His body suddenly burst into light like the twinkling of stars. A vast power surged, and his 2 arms grabbed the incoming spear. Click. Only a crisp sound was heard. The whole world seemed to stand still. It was a divine spear power of the 8th rank majestic ocean river of the god of Oceanus, and his grade was a divine spear at the top level of the god artifact. But it broke. It was gently broken by 2 white and smooth palms. Chapter 54. Dignified attack of the god of light and Chiron. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 54. Dignified attack of the god of light. And Chiron. I'm not wrong. The divine spear of the oceanic god is broken by Apollo with the palm of his hand. The gods felt like he visualized them. Oceanic god, a senior main god, even the king of gods, with his own divine power, did not dare to say that he could easily win. His divine spear was handcrafted for him by the original king of the gods, Uranus, in the past. He accompanied it to conquer the oceans and traverse the gods for 100,000 years. Even if it was ranked among all the main artifacts, it was considered to be relatively top-notch. How can there be a god who can break it with his bare hands? This was equivalent to tearing up a powerful main god. Tearing the main god with bare hands. The gods were terrified. Looking at the graceful blonde god shrouded in infinite light, he was terrified and shocked. This was a beautiful and extraordinary god, clearly a god-shaped monster with a head better than Typhon. I don't believe it. Looking at the broken spear in his hand, Oceanus looked crazy. He couldn't accept such a scene. The existence of light will not disappear because of your unbelief. Apollo stared at him faintly, the aurora field on his body expanded, and a grand torrent of light enveloped Oceanus. Boom! The mighty power of light bombarded. The power of the great oceanic god rolled up in a raging torrent to protect Oceanus. But the power of light was unparalleled, breaking through layers of waves like a broken bamboo, tearing apart the rage, and covering Oceanus. Puff! The god of ocean and rivers fell into the bright river in a daze. His blood was surging, and he coughed up blood. Apollo, you can't get past me. Oceanus' body was blood-stained and disheveled, still hissing and roaring to get up. However, in the infinite light, the golden figure of Apollo suddenly appeared in front of him. Boom! The stars twinkled, and the power of the etheric body manifested majestically. His white palm landed on Oceanus' chest. A flood of blood splattered the wide sky. Oceanus trembled and looked at his chest. He pierced a hole the size of a palm there, and blood was flowing across it. He seemed to be about to say something. But before he could say anything, another palm was imprinted on his face. Pong! Blood and flesh exploded, and his teeth flew off. The lower jaw of the mouth of Oceanus shattered and collapsed. The words he was about to utter turned into a completely muffled sound. Bang, bang, bang. 3 more punches landed on his shoulders, abdomen, and nose. Under the astonished gazes of the gods, Oceanus' body fell from the air, almost torn apart. An old face with a broken chin and a sunken nose bridge wasn't even the slightest demeanor at all. What a dominating palm Apollo has! The gods exclaimed. However, a few goddesses were staring at the golden figure, who was still elegant and handsome. Wow, I really didn't see it before. Apollo is so handsome with his palms. Yeah, look at that palm, look at that movement. Every stroke is so elegant. Why didn't he hit me? With such a strong body, if he is in the grass after the banquet, he will definitely bring the highest joy. Ednel.co. The male gods silently listened to the nonsense of these goddesses. Inside the temple of the king of gods on Mount Olympus. He was staring at the handsome young man who turned into a golden light and headed for Delphi. He fell into silence. His palms firmly grasped the armrest of the throne next to him, and his face was extremely gloomy. Such a divine body. How did he achieve it? The strength of the 8th rank of the main god, Oceanus. If it is a divine duel, the two will have to fight for at least a few days and nights before it is possible to distinguish between the winner and the loser. But after letting him get close, he was blown up in a few blows. It's fortunate that I found out his trump card. Otherwise, if I accidentally approach, even I will suffer a big loss. After taking a deep breath, Zeus continued to look at the crystal in front of him. The stars were shining brightly. The stars in the vast sky twinkled, and a star formed a bright pattern of half man and half horse. Chiron was bathed in starlight. The golden color of Do-Chi on his body gradually faded away, replaced by a splendid radiance of stars. The majestic star, Do-Chi, rolled over the void. The divine power of Helios was dispersed. Many believers below stood up one by one, looking worriedly at Chiron, who was shrouded in the light of the stars. The latter took out his bow and arrow and aimed at the sky. Helios, now let me see if your strength is worthy of the self-proclaimed god of the sun. Helios's eyes were cold, and he shouted. Isn't it the power of the stars? Except for Astraeus, there is no god in the entire starry sky that can enter my eyes. With a little power of the stars, you want to be my enemy. You are so ignorant. As he was speaking, he suddenly looked at the distant sky. He murmured in his heart. Oceanus is already intercepting Apollo. I want you to watch your believers, your temple, destroyed by me and looking helpless. As he laughed heartily, crimson flames rose around him. The blazing flames gathered in the air, and the violent fluctuations condensed into a red sun. Just as his divine power was being summoned, Chiron below shot the bow and arrow in his hand. Swish! The sharp black arrows pierced through the sky with a star-like brilliance, straight to the throat of Helios. Punishment of the sun, God! Helios roared, and the red sun's flames above his head shot out, enveloping the incoming arrows of stars like divine punishment. The boundless flames burned the world, causing space to distort. But the sharp black arrow was like an immortal star, and when the colorful light flashed, it penetrated the layers of fire and shot directly at Helios' throat. Damn it! Helios's eyelids twitched, and the keen intuition belonging to the gods made him feel the chill. This arrow of the stars was completely different from the previous arrows. If he was shot, he would be injured even if he did not die. He let out a low roar, his right palm steeply flooded with majestic divine power, grasping forward with an unparalleled high temperature. Buzz! When the arrow of the star was about to hit him, it was firmly grasped by his hand, and he kept trembling under the heat. He still has the power of gods, but he can't do anything to me. Helios sneered. Suddenly, the arrow of the stars, which was tightly held in the palm of his hand, burst into light, and a touch of cold light hit his lips. Chi! Under the gaze of everyone, Helios' lips split, and the red blood of the gods dripped into the air. Thousands of people in Delphi cheered and shouted the name of Chiron while praising the light. The Do-Chi taught by the great god of light, cultivated to the extreme, was indeed a power comparable to that of the gods. The chief who lit up his own stars wounded the gods with one arrow. Damn, you all deserve to die. Wiping the blood from his lips, the sun above Helios's head rumbled and vibrated like it was about to explode. He showed his anger. The dignified god of the sun was wounded by a mortal's arrow. Such a disgrace was enough for the gods to mock him for 1,000 years. The only way to erase this shame was to burn everything here with the most blazing flames. Helios's eyes shone fiercely. The sun above his head expanded like a balloon, turning into a ball of fire that looked like a hill in the blink of an eye, enveloping Delphi. A crimson fireball covered the entire city. State. Whether they were believers in front of the temple or residents of the city, they all saw the red sun. Mortals, welcome the wrath of God. Helios roared into the sky, and the huge fireball released an infinitely high temperature, completely erasing the city-state below from the ground. Chiron's face was dignified, and the stars all over his body spread violently, forming a colorful shield to resist the high temperature. O mortal, do you think you can protect them? The blazing flames were surging like a tidal wave. It was like a flaming palm that was blasting at the starlight shield. Boom, boom, boom. The continuous impact made the huge shield tremble, and Chiron spat out a mouthful of blood. Teacher. Thekasha worriedly looked at him. After lighting up the stars, his Do-Chi is already comparable to that of the upper gods, and he is the blood of Cronus, with the same blood as Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, and his strength is still better than that of ordinary upper gods. Chiron looked at her bitterly and said, "But Helios is the main god, and he is not the weakest one. My strength is not enough to match him. Child, I can't last long. I have lived for thousands of years, and it is nothing to die here. But Delphi cannot be destroyed, and the belief in the god of light must be preserved." He spoke excitedly, but the Kasha interrupted him. "Teacher, the belief in the god of light will be passed down forever because he is destined to be the god of the gods, the Lord who brings light." She still looked like a young girl, and her clear eyes were full of devotion. She tapped her right palm on her brow. She looked up at the sky and recited, "Great God of light, you are the brightest star in the wide sky. You are the Lord of mercy and discernment. Your light will travel in the heavens, in the earth, in the sea, and in the hearts of all spirits." Her solemn voice infected all the people who were in fear under the crimson sun. She was gazing at the tall statue in front of the temple. The name of light was recited at the same time by all of the people of Delphi. They looked into the sky with a look of anticipation. The solemn voice shook Helios. He roared with jealousy. "You ignorant mortals, Apollo can't save you, be ready to die." The crimson sun swelled up again, and endless flames spewed down. The shield condensed by starlight was torn. Just then, a golden light ripped apart the flames in the wide sky. Under Thakasha's reverent and adoring gaze, the golden divine figure appeared before Helios. Chapter 55. Selene, goddess of the moon, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Helios, it's time for you to stop. In the bright light, Apollo said in a low voice. The endless splendid rays of light tore apart the overwhelming crimson flames, and the huge sun like fireball in the sky exploded. The radiant golden light enveloped Delphi. Great God of light, you have not forgotten your believers. Praise the light, praise you. Staring at the golden figure similar to the statue in front of the temple, the people of Delphi trembled and cheered under the golden light. Supporting the collapsed Chiron, Thakasha's eyes remained motionless in the sky. Looking at the golden figure that was the same as before, crystal tears suddenly appeared in her eyes. The sound of praise below made Helios's face distorted, and he stared at the golden figure shrouded in the light with eyes that almost spewed out flames. "That old thing Oceanus is such a loser that he didn't even manage to stop you." He growled low like a maned dog whose tail had been stepped on. Apollo looked at him calmly and asked, "Why do you want to hurt my believers?" "Why?" Helios sneered. He looked down on the mortals below and said in disgust, "Blame these foolish mortals who only know how to believe in you, a hypocrite. I am the sun god, the source of all light, and they should all believe in me. Is that the only reason?" Apollo frowned at Helios, feeling that something was wrong. After all, Helios was also the leader of the Titans. He participated in the Titan War, stood on the opposite side of Zeus, and retreated intact at the end. Such a main god should not be so reckless and unwise. "Humph, that's my reason." Helios growled, and his face twisted. Apollo felt that something was wrong, but he knew it wasn't the time to think about it. He looked coldly at Helios, and the infinite light bloomed frequently. The surging divine power was like a torrent drowning Helios. "It's good that you came, since these people believe in you so much, then I will defeat you in front of them. I'll let everyone in the sky and the earth know who is the real main god." Helios roared loudly, and the divine power pulled the sun into the sky, and the endless light and heat suddenly burst out. "Domain of light, shatter the void." Apollo's expression was indifferent, and the aurora domain opened up majestically. In the past 30 years, although he had his main focus on the cultivation of the etheric divine body, but the bloodline power of the primordial god level still secretly allowed his divine power to quietly reach the peak of the 5th rank of the main god. At this moment, when he activated the aurora domain, the power of this domain reached its limit. It was comparable to the power of the ninth rank of the main god. And although Helios was a senior main god, his divine power barely reached the sixth rank of the main god. The kingdom of light rampaged, accompanied by a loud bang. The light and heat condensed by Helios shattered and dimmed. Under the gaze of all the citizens of the city-state of Delphi, brilliant light covered Helios' tall body. The blazing heat engulfed his body and his spirit. No way, this is impossible. Helios couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that he would lose. And lost so quickly and without suspense. The sky, the earth, the ocean, and even the underworld, the gods who had been disturbed all over the world, also could not believe it. They witnessed Apollo defeat Oceanus. They all understood that with the strength of Helios, it was impossible to be the opponent of Apollo's terrifying divine body. But now Apollo didn't have a close fight with him at all. He just activated the power of the domain. And defeated Helios so devastatingly. The gods couldn't believe it. Helios was by no means a weakling. He was the son of the Titans, Hyperion, the god of the sky, and Thea, the goddess of light. At the beginning of the Titan War, facing the three Zeus brothers, his performance was not bad, and he was brave and able to fight. But now, facing the son of Zeus, he was defeated miserably and fast. Is he too useless, or is his opponent too strong and scary? The gods gazed at the golden figure shrouded in light with shocked eyes. The people of Delphi below also looked up at the sky in admiration. Noel.n immediately, they praised the light aloud and recited the honorable name of Apollo. Great God of light, you are the brightest star in the vast sky. You are the Lord of mercy and discernment. Your light will travel in the heaven, earth, sea, and in the hearts of all spirits. The sincere prayers made Helios, who was trapped in the infinite light, even more distorted. You foolish mortals, the sun is the source of all light and heat in the universe. You should all believe in me, not him. He roared hysterically as crimson flames burned from his body as he charged out from the layers of light. Apollo's golden eyes flashed, and just as he was about to attack, when a silver-white moonlight struck from the distant sky, blasting away the light around Helios. Seizing this opportunity, Helios escaped from the shroud of light. That's Helios' sister, the moon goddess Selene. Some of the gods who were secretly watching called out. Apollo's golden eyes gazed over, and a wonderful goddess shrouded in soft moonlight appeared beside Helios. The latter roared slowly, "Why are you only attacking now and making me look ridiculous?" Selene didn't expect that the first sentence after his brother swallowed was a question and said aggrieved. "I didn't expect Apollo to be so powerful, and you lost so fast." Her words made Helios' face even more ugly. Gritting his teeth and looking at Apollo, he said to his sister, "Come on, use your silver moon power and my sun power and let's deal with him together." The gods in the dark came back to their senses. Although Selene is only a second-rank main god when her silver moon power and Helios' sun power are combined. It's said that she can condense a trace of chaotic divine power from the legendary chaotic god, Chaos. It's enough to resist a ninth-rank main god. On Mount Olympus, Zeus, who was sitting high in the temple of the King of God, was also full of energy. Staring closely at the crystal in front of him, he smiled and said, "Apollo, this is why I let Atropos and the others influence Helios. Let him and Selene thoroughly test the bottom line of your strength." Chapter 56. Twilight Judgment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 56. Twilight Judgment. In the temple of the King of Gods, Zeus smiled that everything was under control in the city-state of Delphi. Outside the city of Delphi, a cold silver arrow suddenly flew out. With an icy power symbolizing the cruel laws of nature, it penetrated the chest of Selene, goddess of the moon. Under Helios' horrified gaze, Selene fell from the sky. "This is Artemis." The gods lost their voices and stared at the place from where the silver arrow was shot. In the dark woods, a silver-haired girl who was not very good at dressing up, wearing a simple short skirt, clenching the silver bow and arrow in her slender palm, calmly responded to the glances of the gods. Her moon-like pure eyes looked up at the blonde boy above with an encouraging smile. Helios has Selene, and you have me. Her soft silver hair fluttered in the wind as she said softly. In the Aurora domain, Apollo warmly responded with a smile. The infinite light locked onto Helios, who flew down to support Selene. A flood of light covered her. In the hall of the king of gods, Zeus could not help but grimace. He ordered Artemis to come to the palace of the king of God, but he never paid attention to this daughter. He didn't expect that she would dare to disobey his orders, leave Olympus directly, and ambush Delphi. In one fell swoop, the goddess of the moon was hit hard. This caught him off guard. That's when he realized that he had been focusing on Apollo all along, ignoring Artemis, the daughter of the same mother as Apollo. Before he knew it, her strength had also reached the level of main god. The main god level was considered strong no matter where you went. Main god could command quite a few situations. Damn it, without Selene's power. Helios can't compete with these siblings. I have to help them. Zeus pondered as a wave of terror flashed through his body. He solemnly said to the void in front of him. In the name of the king of gods, give the moon goddess Selene recovery from her injuries. The authority of the king of gods, dominating over all things, sovereignty over all things, grace to all things. The sky was swept with light. Helios anxiously looked at Selene, who was trembling after the arrow in his arms, unable to speak, and eagerly shouted. Are you okay? Apollo is coming. Selene's face was pale, and she dimly looked at the familiar figure in front of her. Her foggy head keenly sensed that something was wrong. Her own brother was not cranky before. Suddenly, she felt the pain in her chest had eased a lot. She stood up with difficulty, and her body surged with the divine power of the silver moon. Great, you've recovered. Helios was overjoyed, and the divine power of the sun in his body surged toward Selene. The two forces combined, and the space around them suddenly trembled. Standing in the sky, Apollo's expression froze. In his perception, an incomparably profound divine power suddenly emerged between Helios and Selene. The arrow of Artemis failed to make Selene lose her combat effectiveness. The situation has changed again. Remember the last time when the sun and moon were united, the chaotic divine power evolved, or the Titan War. At that time, Helios had just become the main god, and Selene was only the pinnacle of the upper god. The power outbreak still heavily hit Poseidon, who was the seventh-rank main god at that time. The gods in the dark became restless again, and there were many discussions. The divine power of chaos. The power of chaos, the legendary god of chaos, combined with the power of the sun and the moon, can simulate such a power. Although it's just a trace, it's enough to fight against any strong person under the primordial god. Hearing the words of the gods, Apollo pursed the corners of his mouth and suddenly let out a sneer. Artemis Arrow and other gods just watched secretly, not knowing the severity. But Apollo could clearly see them. His sister had always been the best hunter, always ready to take a long shot even if she didn't kill Selene. That would certainly make Selene lose all combat power for a short period of time. But suddenly, there was a powerful force that repaired Selene's injury and allowed her to recover. Who could have done that? After connecting some dots and considering what Athena said about the goddess of fate, the answer was actually clear. Since you want to know my strength so much, I will fulfill your need. His golden eyes glanced at the top of Olympus in the far sky, and Apollo was filled with a mysterious aura. Sister, I'll leave these mortals in your care. Speaking to Artemis, he flew high into the air. Endless light began to expand. The brilliant golden color was like the traces of youth flowing through the void. And at the bottom, accompanied by the combination of the divine power of the sun and the divine power of the silver moon. A dark gray majestic power slowly condensed in the vast sky. As soon as this power appeared, the whole world became chaotic and dark. The gods were horrified to find that the authority they held had become twisted and trembling, and the most fundamental rules between heaven and earth were roaring. The order was overturned, the law was disordered, and there was only chaos in the world. The mortals looked at the world, which seemed to have changed drastically, in horror and at a loss. In the midst of the chaos, Helios laughed. Chaos is the beginning, the end, and the most disorderly force. Apollo, my chaotic divine power is the supreme power that can confuse all authority and divine power. Tremble before it. Suddenly, a majestic and chaotic force shrouded Apollo in the air. Boom! Under the erosion of the power of chaos, the aurora domain around Apollo became dim inch by inch. Like the sun at noon, when it reached the evening, it was gray and dull, and it will disappear into the sky, and the dark night will replace everything. Ha ha ha, aren't you the god of light? How do you feel to be in darkness? Helios kept laughing wildly. He couldn't wait to see the scene where Apollo fell into infinite chaos. But suddenly, he heard a soft sigh. Helios, you call yourself the god of sun, but you don't know that the moment when the sun dies is the real brightest moment. Twilight, the true light of judgment. Suddenly, in endless chaos and disorder, a faint light slowly rose in the vast sky. It was not the usual bright golden color but a dull orange-red brilliance. Like the afterglow of the sunset. It was deep gray, symbolizing twilight. Twilight was death, destruction, and end. More than that, it was the final judgment of the light. In the dim twilight, Apollo's figure was deep. Chapter 57. Apollo's etheric body power is like a prison. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 57. Apollo's etheric body power is like a prison. Twilight judgment. It was a two-star divine art opened from an advanced treasure chest. It was a pure attack type divine art. Its appearance symbolized the judgment of light and the final charge. In infinite twilight, Apollo walked in the domain of twilight, and beyond this twilight, there was endless disorder and chaos. The world was out of order, the laws of the universe were disordered, and everything was in chaos. The gods and mortals were trembling. The power of chaos, even if it was just a trace, was great enough to turn the world upside down. But suddenly, twilight appeared in the vast sky. It was like the afterglow of the setting sun, blurry and bright, tearing apart layers of chaos, layers of gray and bringing with them gray and hazy light. The sun at noon was a golden fireball that illuminated and warmed the body and mind of all beings. The sunset at dusk was a dark sword, a judgment and charge that tore everything apart. It was the wrath of light, the trumpet of doom. In the eyes of the gods all over the world, the hazy light of the twilight tore apart the layers of chaos, letting the dull twilight command over the earth. As the tearing of chaos increased, this grim twilight gradually became full of vitality. It shifted from orange-red to golden yellow. The dullness turned to brightness. This is impossible. Helios looked at the chaos that was torn apart layer by layer in disbelief. The chaotic divine power that he displayed together with his sister was his proudest trump card. With this trump card, he even dared to despise Zeus and other kings. Because this was the power of chaos. All things in the universe, the first and the last, the strongest and the most extensive power. If it is the real chaotic divine power, of course, it will not be destroyed like this, but are you really using the chaotic divine power? In the bright light, Apollo indifferently gazed at him. Chaos is the beginning and the end, it is chaos and disorder, and it is also the greatest order. You have only seen its power to disrupt authority and shake order, but you don't know the real chaos, which is the greatest order and the highest authority. The chaos born from the combination of the sun and silver moon mighty is only a false chaos after all. Your power may seem strong, but in fact, it is vulnerable. Before the judgment of the twilight, all inherent falsehoods will be torn apart. Between the cold whispers, the raging twilight descended on Helios and Selene. "What are you doing?" Helios struggled in panic. "Don't be afraid, brother, we are all gods of Olympus. He has no qualifications to deal with us, and killing us is despising the authority of the divine court," Selene said very calmly. Helios was relieved by his sister's words. He laughed and said, "Yes, Apollo, your power is beyond my expectations, but do you dare to kill me?" He laughed wildly. Seeing that gods in the dark were stunned, Helios completely forgot to save his face. He sneered. "As long as I don't die unless you stare at me day and night, I will always find an opportunity to destroy your temple and kill your believers." As he was hissing, Apollo suddenly lifted the two in the air. Apollo said calmly, "Why do you think killing you is something I want to do to you? Can't you use your imagination and make me think worse and crueler?" Helios and Selene looked at each other in astonishment and suddenly had a very bad feeling. The gradually bright twilight in the sky suddenly enveloped their bodies. As the gods watched, the divine bodies of Helios and Selene slowly dried up. Their hair turned gray, and wrinkles appeared on their face, hands, and feet. Is this some kind of curse that makes them lose their youth? Some gods guessed around. This was affirmed by the other gods. Cursing was one of the most cruel methods used by the gods to deal with the haters. There were often gods who used curses to turn mortals into monsters. Just stripping them from their youth was not a rare curse. But Helios and Selene were both main gods with powerful divine power. Even if they lose their youth for a while, they should be able to make up for it soon afterward. At this moment, a god shouted in horror. "No, this is not a curse, the vitality and divine power of Helios and Selene are fading, say. Selene has fallen from the main god." This voice shook the gods. They looked in horror. Sure enough, the power of Helios and Selene continued to decline in the endless twilight. Selene, who was only at the second rank of the main god, soon dropped down to the rank of the upper god level and was still losing power. Helios was not much better, he fell from the sixth rank of the main god to the third and then to the second, and he was not far from falling from the rank of the main god. Death is never the most terrifying thing. The terrifying thing is to climb a high mountain but then fall into the dust and roll around in the mud. His divine art, Twilight Judgment, is a powerful killing technique, but the effect is not only killing but also stripping you of your divine power. Helios, didn't you say that you are the sun god, the source of light, but from now, you are not. You're just a pale, weak god, the most humble of inferior gods. You want to destroy my temple, but you won't be a match for Chiron anymore, even a human who has cultivated the golden dough can defeat you. Apollo's voice was extremely low, but when in the ears of Helios and Selene, it was like the wicked laughter of a demon in hell. "No, you can't do that." Helios hunched over, struggling to climb towards Apollo, his face full of despair. His rank had fallen from the main god to the upper god. Bedouinem and Selene was even more miserable, and she had fallen to the primordial god. At the same time, the majestic power of the sun god and silver moon god surged in Apollo's body. The power of Twilight Judgment can actually take away the divine power of the gods. However, different gods have different priesthoods, and rash absorption will only lead to a conflict with their own divine power, which is not worth the loss. But Helios and Selene have different divine powers, and the etheric divine body of Apollo lacked the power of the sun and the silver moon. At this moment, after absorbing the divine power of the two, the group of stars in his body suddenly emerged as a dazzling star, as well as a silver-white moon. His divine body exudes an almost complete charm. "Only one step away from completing the galaxy realm," Apollo murmured. When he perfected the etheric divine body, the gods were shaken by the miserable state of Helios and Selene. They thought Apollo would not easily forgive Helios, but they never thought such a terrifying method would be used. Apollo, the god of light, is truly a god whose might is like a prison and cannot be offended. Chapter 58. The Attack of Zeus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 58. The Attack of Zeus. Twilight Judgment. What kind of divine art is this? Although the chaotic power of Helios and Selene is a fake chaotic power, even if it's me, it will take a lot of effort to break it. But it was easily crushed by Apollo's divine art. And there is also the effect of declining vitality and stripping the divine power. While staring blankly at the picture in the crystal in front of him, Zeus looked solemn. With this trial, he felt more and more that he could not control this sun, and then he thought about what the three goddesses of destiny said. His destiny is special and cannot be speculated. His face was gloomy, and his palms suddenly clenched. No, I can't let him go outside anymore. I'll imprison him for the reason of hurting the gods at will. If I still can't control him, I'll put him into Tartarus. Zeus' eyes were filled with murderous intent. He felt a threat, an unprecedented threat. In the past, it was just a prophecy that the child born by Métis would replace him as the fourth generation of the king of gods. Then without hesitation, he swallowed Métis, the goddess of wisdom who had supported him the most. Because he would never allow any existence that could threaten him to appear. Especially among his sons. Each of his sons was a potential candidate to replace him. Only the son under his control was his son. Those who were no longer in control were the damned traitors. With chills in his eyes, Zeus suddenly turned into a flash of lightning and appeared outside Delphi. Apollo, stop what you're doing. He ordered loudly. Looking at the sudden appearance of Zeus, Apollo's expression condensed, but the movements in his hands accelerated, and the majestic power of twilight judgment stripped away the last divine power of Helios and Selene. The two whimpered and passed out, and both fell to the lower gods. The stars in Apollo shone extremely brightly. The magnificent stars were surrounded by the stars, and more silver-white moons surrounded the stars. The tyrannical momentum swept through the sky. His golden eyes stared silently at Zeus in front of him. Boom! Suddenly, a monstrous aura emanated from Zeus' body, as vast and majestic as the sky, and covered the surrounding world. Apollo, why didn't you carry out my order? Zeus asked indifferently. Helios and Selene provoked me, and I gave them punishment, which is very reasonable, Apollo responded indifferently. Presumptuous. Lightning flashed around Zeus, and blazing thunder shook the sky, shouting loudly. It seems that I have spoiled you too much and made you forget my respect. I am the king of gods, and my command is the supreme will that will never be disobeyed. Helios and Selene are certainly wrong, but you have no qualifications to judge them. You hardly violated the majesty of the divine court and come with me to confinement for 1,000 years. Zeus's voice echoed between the sky and the earth. The gods were amazed. Originally, when Zeus appeared, they thought he was the king of gods who wanted to help their son deal with the follow-up. But they didn't expect that the first thing Zeus would do was scold Apollo. What's going on here? He's in trouble so soon. In the temple of the goddess of agriculture, Demeter, who was holding Persephone, who continued to pay attention to the affairs of Delphi, suddenly turned pale. She murmured, Zeus, my brother, my husband. Are you so ruthless, so cruel? You must kill him just because he showed a little power. Athena's eyes flashed abruptly in the temple of the goddess of wisdom, sitting at the table in the room. Looking at the dressing table in front of her, she said to herself, I didn't expect this day to come so soon. I thought the fake father and son king subject could last for a long time. With a sigh, the goddess of wisdom turned into a ray of light and flew into the distant sky. In the depth of the ocean. Poseidon's eyes were cold as he suddenly sneered, Zeus, your son is so outstanding that you can't hold it in so quickly. And not far from him, the graceful and beautiful Amphitrite, her delicate cheeks flickered hesitantly. Oh Apollo! How did you cause Zeus to lash out so quickly? If the situation really evolves to the worst kind, should I step in to help you? she whispered in her heart. In the dark underworld. Hades, the king of underworld sitting high on the dark throne, opened his deep eyes, stared at the sky, and sneered. The blood of the king of gods, the fate of father and son, can never be avoided. This may be the curse of fate on us, Zeus. Will you resolve a crisis again or repeat the old path of Cronus and Uranus? His deep eyes were filled with anticipation. Under the gaze of gods, the aura of Zeus grew higher and higher, like a boundless vast sky overlooking all beings. One after another, violent lightning erupted into the void like fireworks, dazzling arcs wandered like thin snakes, and violent thunder echoed in the universe. Gazing coldly at Apollo, who stood within the light, he said in a deep voice. My son, as long as you are willing to admit your mistakes and repent after 1,000 years of confinement, you will still be my most beloved son, my pride, the most honored main god of Olympus. What a hypocritical remark. Before Apollo could answer, Artemis, whose silver hair was flying in the distance, flew towards him at high speed with a chill on her cheeks. She stood beside Apollo and looked at Zeus with the most determined eyes. Our Father God, you are the King of gods who rules the entire world, your power makes the gods tremble, and your majesty makes the universe tremble. But in my eyes, you have never been a real king. Your words are full of lies, your judgment is unfair, and you only have power and domination in your eyes, without any kindness or affection. If you want to imprison my brother, don't use such hypocritical excuses. Because no matter what excuse you will have to step over my corpse first. The voice of Artemis stretched in all directions, like high-pitched music, filling the vast sky and the earth, falling into the ears of every god. All gods were stunned. Disobedient daughter, stop your nonsense. Zeus' face blazed with anger, and a thick bolt of lightning struck Artemis. He never thought that someone would dare to challenge his majesty and accuse him of all his deeds in front of the gods. The only way to rid the world of such humiliation was to cleanse her with thunder. But as his thunderbolt struck down, the brilliant power of light was the first to block Artemis, blocking the thunder. Apollo looked tenderly at his beautiful sister beside him and said softly, Sister, I really didn't realize before that you have such a sharp tongue like a sword that can tear all ugly shameful clothes. Then we siblings will use the firmest will to try the invincible might of the so-called king of the gods. Holding his sister's hand, a great blazing light suddenly appeared on his body. And in the sky, the thunder that gathered around suddenly burst out. Chapter 59. Apollo head on with Zeus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 59. Apollo head on with Zeus. Arrogant son, disobedient daughter, you really let me down. In the vast sky, thousands of lightning bolts swiftly wandered, and bursts of thunder echoed throughout the universe. It was as if the sky was in anger to send down the most terrible divine punishment. Zeus held the lightning spear in one hand, his magnificent body completely integrated into the sky and thunder, cold eyes arcs of lightning, filled with destruction. He growled in a low voice as he looked ahead at the power of light that rumbled and flickered. Apollo, Artemis, I will split your flesh and blood into ashes with the lightning that symbolize my authority, and then with the supreme authority of the King of gods, I will take your souls and bind them in the sky and burn them with the fire of the sky. This is punishment for your anger against your father, the greatest king of the gods. Boom! Thousands of thunderbolts were like sudden rain, destroying the sky and the earth as they struck the realm of light. Space was torn apart, rules were shaken, and the entire world was trembling. Whether in the earth or the sea, in Olympus or the underworld, was the god or the mortal, all were at the edge of chaos. At this moment, all feel the horror of trembling deep into the soul. But Apollo smiled. He took a look at his sister beside him, and he took a step out of the field of light. Not to use divine power, not to use authority. Slowly and comfortably, he walked toward the thunder. He opened his arms to the sky as if he were bathing in the sea breeze on a beach in the afternoon. Boom, boom, boom. A lightning bolt with the most terrifying destructive power rained down on his golden figure. The loud sound of thunder echoed through the heavens, and the dazzling arcs of lightning were as brilliant as the sun. The space around him was distorted and collapsed by this terrifying force. But the gods watched. The golden figure was a comfortable face, bathing in the sea of thunder like a hot spring. The brightness of the stars shone on his body. Like the most solid mountain, despite the wind and rain shaking the earth. He was unshakable for all eternity. Such a divine body. Even if he had known earlier, but directly faced with this moment, Zeus's eyes still carry an overwhelming shock. His lightning was the most powerful power to judge and punish the gods. It symbolizes destruction and the highest majesty of the sky. Even the main gods, as long as they were not the most powerful ones, were struck by this raging thunder. In a flick of an eye, he crossed the field, the authority collapsed, and the divine body in pieces, leaving only the soul in front of the infinite heavenly might. Such a great power fell on his golden figure, but it seemed to be other party blowing in wind breeze. Damn, where is the majesty of divine punishment? Zeus's face gloomed down, and pupils of lightning flashed. Heron raised the lightning spear in his hand. This was one of the world's greatest divine weapons, the highest masterpiece of the god of fire, Hephaestus. The divine court of 12 Olympian titans was the seat of supreme authority. When he lifted it, the whole world trembled. The endless lightning that originally ravaged the void was dazzling and flashing. A dense cloud gathered over Zeus' head, and the surging destructive fluctuation slowly concentrated. Apollo, meet the real divine punishment. Zeus sneered loudly, a lightning spear across the air, and stabbed at the golden figure standing within the light. Heaven and earth were instantly covered with brilliant white light. The gods were horrified. The thunder power exploded to the limit, such a spear of light, the last time or the final battle of the Titans' war, piercing the previous generation of the god. King's spear. Well. Standing within the light, Apollo's chest was steeply chilled. A splash of bitterly cold thunder spear light, piercing space, piercing the rules as if the light of time shot towards his chest. Twilight judgment. Apollo's dawn field expanded, and the radiant golden light turned into a dusky and hazy twilight. The dull twilight, covering the vast sky, brought the deepest doomsday judgment. Boom! The power of the dull gray dusk collapsed with the radiant spear light with a rumble. The surrounding void exploded like a rolling stone, a pitch-black slit that spread the canopy like a spider's web. The terrifying power of destruction surged above the earth like a tidal wave. Spears of light and surging twilight covered the entire world. With such power, are they still the main gods? Deep in the ocean, Amphitrite lost her voice. As the wife of Poseidon, daughter of the Oceanus, queen of the sea. She had seen a lot of top main gods. But even for a main god of the 9th rank, I'm afraid it would be difficult to exert such great power. Poseidon said solemnly from the side. Zeus's power is much stronger than before, and now he is only a slight distance away from the original realm. Only Pontos in the ocean is at a similar level to him. Primordial sea god Pontos, the son of the earth mother Gaia, the brother of the main king of the god Uranus, the first generation of the emperor of the ocean. Among the 3 sea emperors today, Pontos' strength was the most effective and deadly. There were even rumors that he had long since stepped into the original realm. Zeus, a figure considered his grandchild, has reached the same level as him. Poseidon and Amphitrite were both surprised. After all, Zeus was the king of gods, the most outstanding god of the 3rd generation of gods. But what about Apollo, who was born less than a century ago? His wife's words made Poseidon's stony face deepen. He sighed. Yes, less than 100 years. I finally understand why Zeus is so quick and ruthless in his determination this time. Within the underworld. Hades, the king of underworld, also sighed. What a god of light, he can make Hecate admire him so much, and she will never forget him. His dark eyes fell on the brown-skirted girl who had just arrived from the realm of darkness. Hecate blushed and retorted, "He is also heartless, no better than Zeus. He did not want to see me for many years. He must be outside with other goddesses hooking up." Although saying so, her clear eyes were still full of worry, anxiously watching the movement of the earth. Thunder and light intertwined, spear light and dusk collided. Fierce vibrations stretched across the vast sky. Terrifying shocks ravaged the earth. The figures of Zeus and Apollo surged into the sky, mountains, and lakes. One after another, thunder wisps of light. Let the high mountains crumble, the earth sink, the rivers evaporate, and the world shake. The waves of terror horrified the mortals on earth. In the city-state of Delphi, Chiron, Phocaea, and others, overwhelmed, looked at the terrifying forces intertwined in the sky. What happened today was shocking to their perception. First, the god of sun Helios was jealous from the god of light and wanted to destroy his temple. The god of light descended and suppressed the god of sun and the moon goddess. But then the king of gods appeared to punish the god of light. The god of light and the king of gods went to war outside the city-state of Delphi. The horrible aftermath at the beginning almost destroyed the entire city-state of Delphi. Luckily, Artemis, the silver-haired holy sister of the god of light, the goddess of hunting, used her divine power to protect Delphi. Looking at the two magnificent figures gradually fighting in the distance, the many people of Delphi were in a trance. They were all believers in the god of light. If another god offended the god of light, they must support the god of light. But the one who struck now was the king of gods. King of Mount Olympus, ruler of all things in the universe. Would the god of light be a match for him? The believers were confused. Suddenly, their most revered chief Chiron let out a cold laugh from above. "What king of the gods, half of the blood flowing in him is the same as mine. The so-called gods of Olympus are nothing but a group of hypocritical and despicable barbarians, only the god of light is a true god. He may not be the highest among the gods, the most powerful, or even my junior in terms of seniority. But only he will bring the guidance of light to all beings on the earth and bestow all spirits with mercy. Under the attention of thousands of believers and many gods. This illegitimate son of the second-generation god, king cultivated the power of the Sagittarius stars and was comparable to the division of all the heroes of the higher gods. Forehooves lightly flexed, right fist lightly tapped on the brow, looking at the golden figure, reverently chanted. The great god of light. Great god of light is the brightest star in the vast sky, the Lord of mercy and discernment, and his light will travel in the sky, earth, sea, and in the hearts of all spirits. Praise the light. His high prayer infected every believer in Delphi. Thousands of people simultaneously tapped their right fists on their brows and followed the chanting. Thousands of prayers intertwined together like a startling thunderclap, vibrating in the ears of every god. In the sky, Zeus, who was enveloped in thousands of thunder, shook the universe with his anger. "Foolish mortals, offending the majesty of the King of gods, you will receive the baptism of thunder after Apollo is punished," he said in the most hateful tone of shock. But the prayers below grew louder and louder. At the same time, a majestic torrent of light surged and swept around him. Zeus gritted his teeth and gazed at the golden figure approaching step by step in the distance. "Apollo, I know your etheric divine body is powerful, but you won't have a chance to get close to me. Because I am the supreme master of all things in the universe, the supreme king who rules and rules over everything." Between the thunder echoes, the deadly power of two gods fused in the vast sky. The ocean, the underworld, Olympus. Many gods simultaneously paled and spat out a name in a shocked tone. God, King Authority. Chapter 60. Feared to lose divine king's authority. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 60. Feared to lose divine king's authority. Chapter 60. Feared to lose divine king's authority. There were countless priesthoods and authorities in the world. Each kind of authority had its unique role. Among the gods, there was only the difference between the strength and weakness of divine power, but not the up and down of authority. Even several main gods' authority cannot be necessarily higher than ordinary gods. It's just that they were powerful. There was only one kind of authority, which was, above all, the authority of the gods. That was the authority of the king of gods. This was a kind of authority that dominated authority. It represented supreme control and dominion over all things in the universe. No matter how powerful the gods were, before the authority of the king of gods, power will be suppressed. The first generation of the divine court period. The king of gods, Uranus, held the authority of the king of gods and forced Gaia, who was his divine queen and his mother, the powerful primordial god, to bow down. This was the great power of the king of gods' authority. Then the Earth Mother Gaia persuaded 12 children to launch a sneak attack on him, stripping the king of gods' authority, which overthrew Uranus. During the reign of the Titans, the second generation king of gods, Cronus also suppressed the universe with the authority of king of gods. Earth Mother Gaia was forced to live in seclusion. The god of abyss, Tartarus, the goddess of the night Nyx, and the god of darkness, Erebus, all cowered in the underworld. The glory of the court of Titans was spread all over the world. But with the arrogance of Cronus, the Earth Mother Gaia secretly supported the brother Zeus and launched the battle of the gods and kings, once again stripping the power of the king of gods. Only then did he succeed in knocking Cronus into Tartarus. Absorbing the lesson of the first 2 times, the Earth Mother Gaia this time enthroned 3 kings, the king of gods' authority in 3 parts, king of the gods, king of the sea, and king of the underworld. She greatly weakened the power of the king of gods' authority. Even so, Zeus, who had only 40% of the authority of gods, was still incomparably afraid of several primordial gods. King of Olympus, the universe, ranked above the gods. It was not easy to inherit and use the power of the king of gods. Since the 3 generations of the divine court, this was the reason why several main gods did not take this authority into their own hands. It was because only the king chosen by fate could divest and carry the authority of the gods. Other gods who rashly take this authority will suffer the fate of the backlash. And even the fate of the chosen king, the use of power too many times, will suffer the fate of the backlash. For a long time, the gods have rarely seen Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, the 3 kings, use this authority. Even if they do, they were simple to use. And today, Zeus urged it with all his might. The invisible vastness fluctuation spread between the wide heaven and earth. The figure of Zeus abruptly transformed into a boundless sky, appearing enveloped by a field of light. The incomparable sense of oppression, like the majesty of the king of God to his subjects, was like the vastness of the world was hopeless to the mortals. A surging light enveloped Apollo. The dawn field began to shrink, inch by inch. It slowly fell from the greatness of the 9th order of the main god, first to the 8th order of the main god, then to the 7th order of the main god, the 6th order of the main god, and the 5th order of the main god. In an instant, Apollo's domain power was suppressed by 5 orders, falling to the power of the 4th order of the main god. The gods watching the battle were all shocked. For ordinary gods, the power of the domain was the greatest way to express their divine power and power of authority. Sufficient to be suppressed by 5 orders, the original flagging enemy could crush you in a moment. What a terrible king of God's authority and the complete control of any god or power. The gods murmured in dismay. But they all still carried a hint of expectation. If there were any other gods, with their divine power suppressed by 5 orders, he would defeat them, but Apollo's divine body was strong and not weak to the 9th order of the main god, so perhaps there was still hope. There were people among the gods with expectations. Even the gods hate their rulers. Most of the gods were very much looking forward to seeing the high king of gods being shaken. Amid the gods' attention, in the much shrunken field of dawn, Apollo's golden eyes were grave, and his figure flickered abruptly. The divine body group of stars shone, and the power of the etheric divine body filled the air. A fist blasted into the sky. "Humph, you can't get close to me." Zeus sneered and once again urged the king of gods' authority. "In the name of the king of gods, I freeze this space." Suddenly, the space in the direction of Apollo's advance was frozen by a great force. At the same time, thunder flashed above, and a spear stabbed down harshly. Apollo swept across with the power of the etheric divine body, blasting away the surrounding space with one fist, but still, his figure was frozen for half a breath. The lightning spear pierced his right shoulder. A flood of divine blood dripped down to the earth. Apollo. Outside the city-state of Delphi, Artemis' beautiful cheeks were filled with worry, and her palms couldn't help but clench tightly. She had never hated herself so much for her incompetence at that moment. She had promised to fight alongside her brother, but she could only watch him get hurt here. If she could, she would give up her life and go up to help Apollo. But she knew that this point of her strength was simply unbearable in front of the terrifying king of gods' authority. The past would only become a burden to her brother, a burden that dragged him down. "Athena, if it's you, you should be able to help him." Clutching her palms tightly, Artemis whispered in her heart. Bang! Another spear laced with thunder stabbed down. Apollo's figure flashed, originally with his speed completely able to dodge this blow. But when he opened his body sideways, he suddenly found that the space around him seemed much larger. "That's right, I'm the one who stretched the distance." Zeus laughed loudly, and the lightning spear pierced Apollo's leg and arm fiercely. Apollo's body stumbled violently and fell into the air. The blood of the red god splattered on the ground. "Alas, it is not working." The gods regretted. The king of gods' authority is too powerful and unmatched. Zeus in this state is simply untouchable. Too bad, Apollo's strength is already the top main god and is the son of Zeus. If the time is right, he can completely invoke the watchful eye of fate and open the battle of the king of gods, and then Zeus can't use the king of gods' authority against him. But unfortunately, the way to find and open the timing of the king of gods' authority dispute is only possessed by the Earth Mother Gaia, and she will not help Apollo. Another outstanding king of the gods' blood spirit, who fell in the power struggle. All the gods whispered and looked tersely. Who could not see that Zeus was afraid of Apollo's power, so he found a reason to make trouble. In fact, in the current situation, Zeus's choice was correct. Otherwise, a few hundred years later, he may not be a rival. But now, the world could only witness the blood of a promising and excellent god in the sky. "You're too good to blame," Zeus said as he locked onto the blood stained golden figure in the sky, his majesty growing. "Originally, I was only thinking of imprisoning you, but now that I have witnessed your strength, I can no longer tolerate your continued existence in the world. I will send you and Artemis into Tartarus, never to be free." The endless lightning bolt blossomed, and the king of gods raised his spear, coldly making what he thought would be his final declaration. In the depth of ocean, Amphitrite grabbed the handrail by her side for dear life. Her heart struggled with how to tell Poseidon to step in and save Apollo. Apollo's strength is very powerful, and if he can escape this disaster, as my ally, he will be able to help me sway the ocean in the future war. Can I talk to Poseidon and ask whether he can stop this state of Zeus? Thinking long and hard, she gritted her teeth to make up her mind to speak. Suddenly the Poseidon beside her face changed wildly, fiercely flying out of the ocean. And in the underworld, Hecate sadly perceived the image of Apollo stained with blood and abruptly pleaded with Hades. "Your Majesty, you also have 30% of the authority of the King of Gods. If you do something, you can stop Zeus, but please save Apollo." Hades looked at her and said indifferently, "Zeus has already made up his mind, no one can shake his will. But you should not worry too much. Being beaten into Tartarus does not mean there is no chance of life." As he was speaking, his pupils shrank abruptly. The whirlwind turned into a dark glow and rushed out of the underworld. Zeus, the divine king's authority is indeed very powerful, but do you think you've eaten me up? Feeling the cold, oppressive feeling overhead, Apollo abruptly and elegantly wiped the blood from his body. Golden eyes calmly gazed at Zeus, who came step by step. The king of gods frowned and sneered. Do you think you can still turn the tide, my arrogant son? Although he said so, he still tried his best to increase the great power of the king of gods. At the same time, the lightning spear was raised high. At that moment the entire world suddenly trembled. Apollo's eyes indifferently pulled out a sword. An ancient sword with rusty color. When the rusty sword's blade was raised high. In the deepest part of the earth, in a majestic palace, wearing an earthy yellow dress, emitting a boundless and heavy aura of the great goddess, Earth Mother Gaia abruptly opened her eyes. Deep in the underworld, wrapped by the infinite blackness of the night. A beautiful goddess wearing a thick black dress with a thin veil also awoke from her slumber with beautiful eyes with surprise. Not far from her, a piece of the darkest and deepest abyss. A blurred and distorted figure sitting high on a throne suddenly issued a low cry. In today's era, how can there be a weapon of extinction?